trusted him.
That was exactly why they choose you.
Lauren Foster had been Anthony Mancini's executive secretary for 18 months. She knew the Mafia boss's schedule better than he did, anticipated every need before he even voiced it, and she never asked questions about the expensive suits arriving at odd hours, or the rapid Italian conversations behind closed doors. She was invisible in the best possible way, professional, efficient, loyal, at least. That was how things used to be. The operation occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Midtown Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, glass and steel stretching right up to the sky. Anthony's private office sat at the corner, all heavy dark wood and leather. It was the kind of space demanding absolute respect before a single word was even spoken. Lauren's desk stood just outside a guardian, between Anthony and the outside world. She arrived at 7 every morning without fail, black coffee waiting on his desk by 7:15. Files organized, calls screened, syndicate meetings prepared. 18 months of a perfect routine. Until 6 months ago, when everything just shattered. Lauren had been leaving the building at 11 at night, carrying stacks of documents that needed filing. She hailed a taxi on the corner, slid into the back seat, and gave her address in Queens. The driver pulled into traffic. 3 blocks later, a black sedan came completely out of nowhere. High-speed chase. A rival crew fleeing from one of Anthony's operations gone wrong. The sedan ran a red light at 60 miles per hour and slammed right into the passenger side of Lauren's taxi. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The world spun into an absolute chaos of pain. Lauren woke up in a hospital bed 3 hours later. Shattered kneecap. Torn ligaments. Surgery required immediately. Anthony had been right there when she opened her eyes. Still wearing the exact same shirt from earlier. Tie loosened. Hair disheveled. He stood by the window, back rigid, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He told her the surgery was scheduled for 6 in the morning. He said he got the best orthopedic surgeon in the state, and that everything was handled. Lauren had tried to speak to tell him she couldn't afford that, but he cut her off with a single raised hand, non-negotiable. That was the only conversation they ever had about it. The surgery went well. 3 grueling months of recovery followed. Physical therapy, pain management, slow. Careful steps just learning to walk properly again. Anthony paid every single medical bill without comment. He sent flowers once, a massive arrangement that filled her small apartment. No card when Lauren returned to work. He simply nodded and welcomed her back. Nothing else. No questions about her recovery. No discussion of the accident. No verbal acknowledgement of the heavy guilt clearly eating at him. But Lauren saw it anyway. She saw the way. His jaw tightened whenever she limped past his office. She noticed how he reassigned her parking spot to the absolute closest space in the garage. She felt the increased security presence following her home each night. Anthony Mancini didn't apologize with words. He apologized with actions. For 3 months after her return, things went back to normal, or at least, as normal as they could be. Lauren still limped slightly, especially at the end of long days. Her knee always ached when rain was coming, but she managed. Then, 4 weeks ago, her physical therapist recommended she start strength training to fully rehabilitate the joint. Lauren found a gym 3 blocks from the office called Elevate Fitness. It was clean, professional, and not too crowded during the early morning hours. She signed up for sessions with a personal trainer, a former Marine named Ryan Blake, who specialized in injury recovery. That very first session had been brutal. Lauren's leg had trembled and threatened to give out completely. Pain shot through the joint with every movement. But Ryan had been patient and encouraging, constantly adjusting the exercises to fit her physical limitations. He spotted her through a modified squat, telling her she was much stronger than she thought. He said her body remembered how to do this, and they just had to remind it. By the 2nd week, Lauren was hooked. Not on Ryan specifically, though he was undeniably good at his job. She was hooked on the raw feeling of getting stronger. Her body was slowly remembering what it felt like to move, without pain, without fear. Tuesday and Thursday mornings became gym mornings. That meant arriving at the office at 7:30 instead of 7. Anthony noticed immediately. That first Tuesday, he glanced at the clock when she walked in, looked at her face, then turned back to his computer without a single comment. But Lauren felt the heavy weight of that look. By the 2nd week, he was standing by her desk when she arrived, holding his coffee. He asked if she hit traffic. She said no, the gym. She set down her bag, explaining that physical therapy recommended strength training for her bad knee. He just nodded once and said it was good. That really should have been the end of it. But Anthony kept noticing things. Lauren started wearing her hair down a lot more often. It was purely practical. The gym's locker room had terrible hair dryers, and it air-dried better loose. But Anthony noticed. She caught him looking 3 separate times. His dark eyes tracked the way. Her hair fell across her shoulders, right before he'd jerk his attention back to whatever document he was reading. She also started carrying a bright pink gym bag. It was a gift from her best friend Sarah, who insisted that Lauren desperately needed more color in her life. The bag clashed terribly with Lauren's usual neutral aesthetic of grays and beiges and blacks, but it made her smile every time she saw it. Anthony noticed that, too. One Thursday morning, he pointed out the new bag. Lauren replied it was just a gift from a friend. He repeated the word pink, saying it slowly like he was still trying to figure out what the color actually meant. She told him it was cheerful. Something flickered across the boss's face, almost too quick to identify. It really was. But the thing Anthony noticed most was how Lauren smiled at her phone. 3 weeks into training, Ryan started texting her motivational messages and reminders to stretch between sessions. Helpful, very professional. But those messages made Lauren smile. Small, genuine expressions of amusement that completely lit up her face. And Anthony saw every single one. He was in a meeting with 3 of his Mafia captains when Lauren's phone buzzed on her desk outside. Through the glass wall, he watched her pick it up, read the message, and smile. It was soft, warm, directed entirely at a screen. He lost track of the conversation entirely. Luca Ferraro, his second in command, had to repeat a question twice before Anthony finally refocused. By the 4th week, Anthony was actively listening for any mentions of the gym. Or the trainer, Ryan. The man's name appeared in conversation 5 times in 3 days. Ryan says I should ice my knee after sitting too long. Ryan recommended this protein shake for muscle recovery. Ryan thinks I'll be running again in 2 months with this progress. Ryan. Every single mention felt like a small blade twisted right between Anthony's ribs. Thursday afternoon, Lauren stopped by his office to drop off some signed contracts. She was moving with a lot more confidence now. Her limp was almost entirely gone. Her posture had straightened out. She looked healthier, stronger, happy. She told him Ryan helped her do a full squat today. Genuine pride ringing in her voice. First time since the horrible accident. Complete range of motion, with 0 pain. Anthony looked up from his heavy desk, telling her that was good progress. Amazing progress. Her smile was absolutely brilliant. She said Ryan was really good at what he does. Something hot and ugly twisted deep in Anthony's chest. He recognized it immediately, and he hated it instantly. Jealousy. He somehow managed to say he was glad she was recovering well. Lauren nodded and left, completely unaware of the war happening inside him. Anthony sat alone in his office for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to rationalize away the heavy feeling. She was his secretary. Her personal life was absolutely none of his business. If some gym trainer was helping her heal from an injury that happened because she worked for him, that was a good thing. That was exactly what Anthony wanted, except it wasn't. He didn't want some stranger making her smile like that. He didn't want someone else seeing her look so proud and happy and strong. He wanted to be the one who gave her that, which was completely inappropriate, unprofessional, and incredibly dangerous. Anthony poured himself 2 fingers of scotch from the private bar in his office, forcing himself to let it go. Lauren was completely off limits. She worked for him. She trusted him. He absolutely would not cross that line, just because he couldn't control his own emotions. Decision made, problem solved, until Thursday evening changed everything. Anthony was reviewing quarterly reports when he heard Lauren's heels clicking across the marble floor outside his office. He glanced at the clock. 9:15. Late but not entirely unusual. They both often worked past regular hours. What was unusual was when the clicking stopped at her desk for several minutes. Then it started again, heading straight toward the elevator. Anthony stood, moving straight to his doorway. Lauren was halfway across the reception area, pink gym bag over her shoulder, hair falling loose around her face. She'd applied lipstick coral pink and changed from her usual neutral blouse into something slightly more fitted. He asked if she was leaving. The question came out much sharper than he intended. She turned, a bit startled, and said yes. She said she finished the Morrison contracts. It was late, and she had plans. Then she smiled. That same warm expression he'd seen directed at her phone all week. Anthony's hands curled into tight fists at his sides. Plans, she explained. Ryan offered an extra training session, making up for the Tuesday she missed during the board meeting. She adjusted the heavy strap on her shoulder. She said the gym was open until midnight. Ryan, of course. Anthony pointed out that 9:30 was awfully late for a training session. He couldn't keep the sharp edge from his voice. Lauren's brow furrowed. She asked if something was wrong, calling him Mr. Mancini. Everything was wrong, but Anthony couldn't say that. He just told her no, be safe. She nodded, her smile returning, and wished him a good night. The elevator doors slid shut. Anthony stood alone in the reception area. His jaw ached. Jealousy was burning straight through his carefully maintained control. He managed to last 15 minutes before grabbing his coat, taking the stairs 2 at a time to the garage, and sliding behind the wheel of his black Audi. He told himself he was just making sure she made it to the gym in one piece. This was purely about security, about protecting an employee who had already bled once because of his world. He fed himself a lot of lies, tailing her taxi through the dark Manhattan streets. Inside the cab, Lauren pulled out her phone and dialed. "Hey, it is me," she whispered when the line picked up. "I am going to be late tonight. Ryan scheduled an extra session. I know, but my knee feels so good, Sarah. I can actually move again without pain." Sarah. Anthony filed the name away. A strange, hollow twist hit his gut. He realized he knew almost nothing about Lauren and her personal life. 18 months working side by side, and he could not name one friend, could not recall a single mention of family, had no clue what she did on a Sunday. He had kept her at such a calculated, professional distance that she was nearly invisible to him, until suddenly, she was everything. The taxi stopped outside Elevate Fitness. Lauren paid and stepped onto the pavement, her bright pink gym bag cutting through the evening darkness. Anthony parked across the street, leaving the engine running as he watched her push through the glass doors. This was absolute madness. He should leave right now, head back to the office, pour a heavy scotch, and forget this entire night. Instead, he killed the engine and settled in. Through the windshield, he watched Lauren vanish inside Elevate Fitness. The building was entirely glass and chrome, deliberately transparent to flaunt the high-end equipment inside. From across the street, his view was perfectly clear. She reappeared on the main floor, weaving past rows of treadmills toward the free weights in the back. That pink gym bag stood out like a neon beacon against the cold grays and blacks of the room. Then Ryan stepped out from somewhere in the back. He was tall, probably 6'2", carrying the kind of heavy, functional muscle that came from disciplined training, rather than pure vanity. Blonde hair tied back in a small knot at his skull, faded tattoos covered both forearms, military ink that hinted at violent stories. Anthony could not quite read from the street. Ryan smiled the second he spotted Lauren, a broad, easy grin that just looked too natural. Lauren smiled right back at him. They met up near the squat rack, and even from this distance, Anthony saw exactly how comfortable they were. No awkward shifting, no hesitation at all. Just two people who had clearly spent enough time together to build a real, easy rhythm. Ryan said something low. Lauren laughed. The sound was completely deadened by the glass, but he saw the way her shoulders shook, the way her hand came up to lightly cover her mouth. Anthony ground his jaw until the teeth actually ached. Then they started setting up the equipment. Ryan pulled heavy plates from the rack and dropped them into place. Lauren tossed her bag onto a bench and started stretching out, rolling her shoulders back before bending to touch her toes. She wore tight black leggings and a fitted deep purple tank top. Anthony had never seen her look like this. At the office, she hid behind conservative blouses and stiff dress pants, clothes meant to make her completely disappear. This was entirely different. This was Lauren as a real person, not his corporate secretary. Ryan demonstrated a movement, some sort of deep lunge with a heavy rotation. Lauren studied him, nodded, then tried mirroring the motion. Her form was just slightly off. Ryan closed the gap. His hands reached out, gripping her waist to physically adjust her posture, hands directly on her waist. Something incredibly dark and possessive ripped open in Anthony's chest. He forced himself to take a breath, to think clearly. Ryan was a fitness trainer. This was just his job, fixing form, preventing muscle injury. It was standard. It meant absolutely nothing, except Anthony wanted to cross the asphalt, walk through those glass doors, and remove Ryan's hands from Lauren's body with extreme prejudice. Instead, he crushed the steering wheel until his knuckles went bone white. This was pathetic. He was pacing in his head like a jealous kid, not the boss of the most dangerous crime family on the East Coast. Lauren was allowed to hire a trainer. She was allowed to smile, to laugh, to just exist completely outside of his shadow. She did not belong to him. But rationality was losing a very bloody war against the instinct to simply claim her. For 20 minutes, Anthony sat in the dark Audi, watching them burn through sets. Ryan remained professional, keeping a polite distance most of the time, but every so often, he stepped in tight to spot a lift, adjust her grip on the iron, or flatten her spine. Every single touch made Anthony's vision tunnel. He had to go. This stalker routine crossed every boundary of sanity. He was her boss, not her warden. What she did after hours was none of his damn business. Anthony finally reached out to turn the ignition key, but then Ryan stepped back from the rack, said something that made Lauren nod, and walked toward a side exit door. Anthony watched the trainer push through into a dark alleyway, watched the guy dig a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, tap one loose, and spark it with a silver lighter. Ryan leaned back against the dirty brick, took a massive drag, and blew smoke into the freezing night. Just a normal smoke break. Anthony was absolutely leaving now. This whole pathetic surveillance stunt was miles beneath him. His fingers were literally gripping the key when harsh headlights slashed through the dark. A sleek gray Mercedes sedan rolled to the curb right where Ryan was standing. It was a heavy, armored-looking ride that cost more than most civilians earned in a lifetime. The driver door swung open. A man stepped onto the concrete. Anthony's blood instantly turned to ice. He knew that face well. He had memorized it years ago, right alongside every other face that belonged to his sworn enemies. Viktor Sokolov, 6'1", always wearing custom tailoring, and never walking without a concealed weapon. He had slaughtered his way up the Bratva ranks, earning his spot as Alexei Volkov's right-hand man through sheer, intelligent brutality. And right now, this monster was standing in a damp alleyway with Lauren's personal trainer. Viktor moved with the quiet arrogance of a man who owned the pavement he walked on. Reaching inside his tailored jacket, he pulled out a thick, white envelope bulging with contents. Ryan pushed off the brick wall but did not step closer. Cautious, smart. They started talking. Anthony could not hear a single word over the traffic, but he spoke fluent body language. This was not friendly banter. This was street business. Viktor held out the envelope. Ryan hesitated for about 3 seconds, then snatched it. He tore the flap open instantly. His thumbs riffled through stacks of what Anthony now recognized as raw cash, counting, verifying the drop. The motion was fast and practiced. 90 seconds of tense conversation followed. Viktor dominated the exchange, chopping the air with small, precise hand gestures. Ryan nodded twice, asked what looked like 2 quick questions, got his answers. Then Viktor simply pivoted and walked back to the idling Mercedes. No handshake. Zero polite filler that usually capped off a legal business deal. The luxury car pulled sharply from the curb, vanishing into the city traffic. Ryan stood entirely alone in the shadows, that thick envelope still gripped in his hand. He stared down at the cash for a long moment, his face completely blank. Then he folded the package in half, shoved it into his back pocket, took a final drag, and ground the cigarette out with his boot, totally casual, like a guy just finishing a smoke break. Like he had not just taken dirty money straight from the Bratva. Ryan walked back inside the gym, pushing the door open without a single backward glance. Anthony sat totally frozen behind the wheel. The burning jealousy was instantly incinerated by the cold fury of a threat assessment. This was no longer about feelings, not about watching Lauren smile at another guy, or irrational possessiveness, or wanting a woman he definitely shouldn't have. This was strictly about security and danger. It was about his personal secretary being leveraged as a backdoor into his Mafia organization. He ripped his phone from his coat and dialed Luca. 2 rings. Boss. Luca sounded perfectly alert despite it being near midnight. The man never really slept, a survival habit drilled in by 20 years in the life. I need a total background check. Highest priority. On who? Ryan Blake, personal trainer at Elevate Fitness, over on Madison and 43rd. I want everything. Military service files, financial history, known associates, arrests, even his parking tickets. Every shred of data that exists. Luca paused on the line. Is this related to the secretary? Anthony clenched his jaw tight. Yes. How urgent. I need it in exactly 3 hours. Another heavy pause. That is a brutal timeline, boss. I just watched the man take a cash payoff from Viktor Sokolov in an alleyway right behind Lauren's gym. Anthony's tone dropped to absolute ice. So yes, extremely urgent, Viktor. Every trace of exhaustion vanished from Luca's voice. You are absolutely sure. Positive, which means Lauren is either an active pawn, or she is in very real danger. I need to know which one it is. I will pull every guy we have. You will have the file by 1 a.m. Good. Anthony killed the call, staring through the glass walls. He saw Lauren back under the squat rack. Ryan was standing close, spotting her through the heavy lift. She looked genuinely happy, so focused, totally oblivious that her trainer had just pocketed cash from the deadliest Russian syndicate on the East Coast, utterly unaware that she might have a target on her back. Anthony forced his mind to calculate. There were 3 distinct possibilities. Number 1, Lauren actually knew about Ryan's Bratva connection and was playing him. Highly implausible. 18 months of flawless service, access to Mafia secrets she had never once leaked, and a fierce loyalty tested over and over. If she wanted to betray him, she had plenty of easier ways. No. Ryan was using Lauren to slip inside Anthony's organization without her even realizing it. She was the ideal mark. She held direct access to his schedule, his meetings, his daily movements, and she would never suspect her friendly, dedicated trainer of hiding a second agenda. Option 3. The Victor thing was just a coincidence, and had absolutely nothing to do with Lauren. Anthony didn't buy coincidences. He sat there watching them for another 40 minutes. The session wrapped. Ryan tossed out a joke that made Lauren laugh one last time. She grabbed her pink bag, waved goodbye, and walked out the door. Anthony started the engine, ready to shadow her taxi all the way home, just to be sure she made it. His brain was already 3 moves ahead, weighing angles, mapping risks, building countermeasures. Before Lauren's cab even banked toward Queens, he locked in 2 choices. First, keep her entirely in the dark until he had hard proof. There was 0 point in panicking her if Ryan's ties to Victor were completely unrelated. Second, if the trainer was actually using her to reach him, Anthony would crush the threat before it could even breathe. He had buried friends because he was too slow, too soft, too willing to trust people. He absolutely would not lose Lauren. His screen lit up at 12:45 a.m. A text from Luca. Preliminary stuff looks interesting. Full report in 15. Anthony killed the engine on a dark side street. At exactly 1 a.m., the phone rang. Talk to me, Anthony answered. Ryan Blake, 31, kicked out of the Navy 5 years back. The official stamp says insubordination, but I pulled the real file. He fought orders on a classified op, flat out refused to execute what he called an illegal command, earned himself a general discharge. So the guy has principles, Anthony replied, voice dead flat. But that doesn't explain Victor. I am getting there. After the military, he bounced around a lot. Security gigs, private contracting, nothing permanent. Landed at Elevate Fitness 9 months ago. Clean on paper, but his bank statements sing a different tune. How different? He earns $3,200 a month, but he has been pulling irregular cash drops between $8,000 and $15,000 every month for the last 2 months. Always cash. Always under $10,000 to dodge the automatic flag. Anthony squeezed the steering wheel. Sources, unknown. But I ran his movements against known Bratva hotspots. He has 3 confirmed sit-downs with Viktor Sokolov in the last 8 weeks. Tonight makes sense at 4. What else? Here is the hook. Luca dropped into that low tone he saved for the heavy hits. I grabbed the client logs for Elevate Fitness. Ryan trains 17 regulars. 4 of them are personal assistants to heavy hitters. 1 works for Jonathan Mercer at Goldman Sachs. 1 handles Senator Patricia Morrison. 1 is at the DA's office. And now, yours. The shape of it was obvious. He is mining them for intel. Anthony stated it as cold fact. That is my read, too. He targets access, sweats with them, builds that physical trust, siphons out the details, while they think they are just making small talk. And the Bratva writes the checks. Exactly. Anthony stared out the glass at the dead street. What is his play with Lauren? Specifically, your schedule, your habits. She knows your blind spots, your routes, your private sit-downs. That kind of map is gold to Volkov. Has he pressed any of his other marks yet? Asked the wrong questions. I am chasing that down right now. I should know by sunrise. But boss, there is one more detail. What is it? I dug into his family. He has a kid sister, Melissa Blake, 19, enrolled at NYU. Well, she was. She dropped off the map 4 months ago. Nobody has seen her since mid-August. 4 months. Right before those cash drops started. You think the Bratva took her. It fits the playbook. Find the nerve. Press hard. Own the man. If they have his sister in a cage, Ryan is cornered. He plays ball or she bleeds. Anthony let the weight of it settle. It didn't shift the bottom line. Ryan was handing the Bratva the keys, and that put Lauren in the crosshairs. His tragic motive mattered way less than her actual survival. Keep hunting for the sister. I need hard proof. Consider it done. How do you want to handle the trainer? Anthony checked the dash. 1:16 a.m. I am cutting him out of the picture before he ruins anything else. Need me to step in? No, I will deal with this myself. boss if the Bratva holds his leash. Snapping it might spark a war, especially if they realize you saw the strings. Then we deal with the fallout when it drops. But I refuse to leave a loaded gun, this close to Lauren, for one more day. Luca let the silence hang for a second. How much does she know? Nothing, and it stays like that until I bury this. Understood. I will drop the file on your desk by 7 a.m. Anthony killed the call and sat perfectly still. His brain burned through the variables. Lauren had zero clue she was prey. No idea the guy helping her heal was actively weaponizing her. Every casual slip about Anthony's day, every small complaint about his meetings, boxed up and shipped to the men trying to kill him. She actually trusted Ryan. The betrayal made his knuckles pop. By sunrise, the plan was set. Friday broke with bitter autumn, light slicing across the Manhattan skyline. Anthony had been pacing his office since 5 a.m. Luca's dossier covered the mahogany desk, like morgue photos. 47 pages detailing every breath Ryan Blake had ever taken. Service medals, the ugly discharge, bank receipts choking on dirty cash, grainy surveillance shots capturing his previous sit-downs with Viktor Sokolov, a client roster full of names standing just one step away from real power, and buried deep in the appendix a missing person report filed by his mother, over in New Jersey. Melissa Blake, vanished August 14th, 4 months gone. Anthony had digested every syllable twice. Now he leaned deep into the leather chair, rubbing his jaw, mapping out exactly how to excise this tumor, without warning the Bratva that their spy ring was burned. The elevator pinged at 7:28. Lauren's heels snapped sharply across the marble reception floor. He listened to the heavy thud of her bag, the hum of the computer waking up, the hiss of the coffee machine in the alcove, the metallic slide of a file drawer. 7:30 on the dot. She stepped into his doorway, holding his mug. Black 2 sugars, the exact way she poured it for 18 months. Good morning, Mr. Mancini. Her tone was light, completely alive. Anthony looked up from the grim files. He really looked at her for the first time since this mess began. Her hair was still damp from the gym showers, tied back in a messy braid that let damp strands cling to her jaw. Her cheeks burned pink from the workout and the bitter wind. Charcoal blouse, sharp black pants back in the armor, but her frame held a different kind of tension now. She stood taller, moved without the hesitation. The sheer physical progress over the last month was impossible to ignore. Ryan did that, whatever venom he was hiding. He had genuinely put her broken pieces back together, which made the upcoming bloodletting so much messier. Morning, he took the warm ceramic from her hands. How was the session today? Genuine shock crossed her eyes. He never asked about her life. It was good, really good, honestly, she beamed. And that dark knot pulled tight in Anthony's chest. Ryan says I can try jogging in 2 weeks. Just light jogging, nothing crazy, but still, 6 months ago, I was dragging my leg everywhere. That is tremendous progress. Anthony kept his tone perfectly hollow. Your discipline through the pain has been incredible to watch. Thank you. She shifted her weight. A little uncomfortable. Is there an absolute fire this morning? The calendar looks empty until 10. No fires, but I need you to wipe my afternoon clean. Scrub the investor sit down. Her forehead creased. Pure administrative panic. Nothing personal. Mr. Mancini, that room has been booked for 3 weeks. They are flying in from Chicago just to shake your hand. I know that. Push them to next week. Can I ask why? She already had her phone out, thumbs flying over his schedule. If the building is burning down, I need an excuse when they scream at me. Personal business that cannot wait. Lauren froze, her thumb hovering over the glass. In 18 months. He had never once bumped a Chicago whale for personal errands. But she knew the line. I will handle it. Thank you, Lauren. She gave a curt nod and vanished back to her desk, already drafting the apologies. Anthony watched her through the heavy glass wall. She was totally blind, oblivious that her gentle trainer was spoon-feeding her daily routine to a crew of butchers who would gladly slit her throat if the math worked out. Zero idea she had been tagged, isolated and played. The sheer reality of it made the acid rise in his chest. He waited until she was buried in her screen. Then he pulled out his secure phone and dialed his lawyer. David, I need you to structure a corporate acquisition today. What is our timeline? David Harlow had survived 8 years with Anthony by never asking the wrong questions. The transaction has to close by end of business Tuesday. That gives us 4 days. What kind of acquisition are we talking about here? A gym Elevate Fitness on Madison. I want to buy the business outright, take on all assets and liabilities, and assume possession immediately. Total silence on the line. Then very carefully may I ask the reason for the urgency. Security concern. Understood. I will start the research this morning. Is price a factor? No, pay whatever it takes to close this, quickly and quietly. I do not want the current owner having any time to think or negotiate. Make the offer so generous that they would be absolutely stupid to refuse. I will have preliminary numbers by noon. Anthony killed the call and instantly dialed Luca. I need a different kind of search, he said the second Luca picked up. Female physiotherapist, age 45 or older, at least 15 years of experience, specializing in post-surgical recovery. And Luca, I need someone completely clean. Zero connections to any organization. No financial irregularities. No buried history that could be used as leverage. This is for the secretary, yes. The second I remove Ryan, Lauren's recovery cannot stop. I need someone in place immediately. How fast? I want options by Monday morning. Someone who can start by Wednesday, at the latest. I will make it happen. Luca paused. You are moving dangerously fast on this. Every day Ryan has access to Lauren is another day of brutal exposure. I am not giving the Bratva one more minute to extract information. What is your plan for? When they realize their asset has been cut off, let them notice. By the time they figure out what happened, the connection will already be dead. They cannot leverage what they can no longer access. And if they come at you directly, then we handle it exactly the way we always do. Anthony's tone was dead ice. But they are not getting to Lauren. He spent the rest of Friday morning forcing normalcy, routine calls with his captains, reviewing shipment schedules, handling the daily grind that kept his organization running flawlessly. But his mind was locked on the gym 3 blocks away, on the man using his secretary as a personal intelligence source, on the smartest way to dismantle this threat without leaving collateral damage. Right at noon, David called back. I have the numbers. Elevate Fitness is owned by a holding company, controlled by a private investor named Marcus Shaw. He has held it for 6 years, runs 4 other gyms in the city. Profitable, but nothing spectacular. What is the current valuation, based on revenue and assets? Probably around 2.3 million, but for a lightning-fast sale with 0 contingencies, I would recommend offering 3, offer 4. Tell him he has until Monday at noon to accept, or the money vanishes. 4 million for a place worth 2. Even David sounded shocked. I want this done. David, make the offer so insanely attractive he cannot possibly say no. I will draw up the papers this afternoon. The weekend bled past. Anthony kept a tight leash on Ryan through Luca's surveillance team. Saturday morning, Ryan met a contact at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Not Victor this time, but another Bratva associate Anthony's crew had on file. Whatever intelligence operation these guys were running, it was highly active and ongoing. Sunday evening, David sent the confirmation. Marcus Shaw had taken the deal, $4 million cash, immediate transfer of ownership. The papers would be finalized Monday morning. Full possession transferred by Tuesday afternoon. Anthony sat alone in his penthouse, the city light spreading below him like shattered glass, and felt the first real hit of satisfaction in days. Monday morning, Lauren arrived at her usual 7:30. She looked wiped out, moving much slower than she had on Friday. You okay? Anthony asked as she set down his coffee. Fine, just a brutal workout this morning. Ryan introduced a new routine and I am definitely feeling it. Ryan, still training her, still building that trust, still mining her for secrets. Well, not for much longer. At 11 a.m., Luca walked into Anthony's office carrying a heavy folder. 3 candidates for physiotherapist, he said, slapping it down on the desk. All vetted, all clean, all highly qualified. Anthony started flipping through the profiles. The second one hooked his attention immediately. Patricia Simmons, 52 years old, 28 years of experience, specialized in orthopedic recovery, currently at a sports medicine clinic in Connecticut, but willing to relocate for the right price. Married 3 grown children, 0 debt, no criminal record, absolutely no connections to any organization. Perfect, this one. Offer her whatever salary she demands. I need her ready to start Wednesday morning. Where will she be working? We are converting the 2nd floor conference room into a private therapy space. Get it equipped properly. Full setup. Professional grade equipment. Everything she needs. Luca raised an eyebrow. You are bringing the therapy here, into the building. Closer to my security. Less exposure outside. Lauren will be safer here. The secretary is going to ask questions. Later, Anthony closed the folder. What is the status on Ryan? Still following his normal patterns. He trained the secretary this morning at 6:30. Went home. Then back to the gym for afternoon clients. Nothing unusual. And Saturday's meeting. We pulled long-range audio. He was handing over the Goldman Sachs executive's schedule, a detailed breakdown of where he will be for the next 2 weeks. Anthony's jaw locked. How much has he shared about Lauren? We do not know yet, but we have to assume he has been reporting everything. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sky that made Manhattan look almost beautiful. Anthony was at his desk by 6, just waiting. At 9 a.m. sharp, David called. The papers are signed. You officially own Elevate Fitness as of 30 minutes ago. Physical keys are being transferred to you this afternoon. Good. I will be there at 4 to take possession. At 2 p.m., Anthony stood up and grabbed his dark coat. Lauren glanced up from her computer, heading out. Business to handle. I will be back in a few hours. The Castellano meeting is at 5. Reschedule it. A shadow flickered across her face. Confusion, maybe even concern. 2 canceled meetings in 4 days was practically unheard of for him, but she simply nodded. I will handle it. Anthony took 2 of his heaviest security guys, Luca included, and drove straight to Elevate Fitness. The gym was moderately packed for a Tuesday afternoon. Cardio machines humming, weight section slamming, a group fitness class pushing through in the back studio. The manager met him nervously at the front desk. Cynthia Rodriguez, 41, managing the place for 3 years. Mr. Mancini, she extended a shaking hand. Welcome. Mr. Shaw briefed me about the ownership change. Good. I need to speak with you privately. He steered her straight into the back office. Luca taking up a heavy position right outside the door. Effective immediately. I am making some staffing changes, Anthony said without any preamble. Ryan Blake is terminated. Process his final paycheck right now. Collect any gym property he has, and make absolutely sure he is removed from all systems. He is never allowed back in this building. Cynthia blinked hard. Ryan, but he is one of our very best trainers. His clients love him. I am well aware. The decision is entirely non-negotiable. May I ask the reason? If there has been a complaint, or Anthony's dead stare stopped her mid-sentence. No complaints. But his employment here ends today. Am I perfectly clear? She swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Completely clear. Does he have any sessions scheduled this afternoon? Cynthia scrambled to check the computer. 2. 1 at 4:30. 1 at 6. Cancel them both. Tell his clients we are transitioning trainers, and they will be contacted about a reassignment. How soon can you have his personal belongings ready for pickup? I can have everything boxed up within the hour. Do it, and make sure your security knows he is no longer authorized to enter. Anthony walked out of the office and positioned himself right where he had a clear view of the main entrance. At 4:45, Ryan swaggered through the door in his standard uniform. Black polo with the gym logo, athletic pants, training shoes. He headed straight for the staff area in the back. Anthony just waited. 3 minutes later, Ryan emerged carrying a backpack. Absolute confusion painted across his face. He stormed over to Cynthia at the front desk. What is going on here? My stuff was boxed up and there is a note saying, I am terminated. I am so sorry, Ryan. There has been an ownership change. And the new owner made the decision. Ownership change? What the hell are you talking about? The gym was sold over the weekend. Ryan's face shifted through a rapid cycle of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, a creeping, dawning terror. Sold to who? Me. Anthony stepped out of the shadows. Ryan turned. The moment recognition actually hit him. Every drop of blood drained from his face. Every person touching organized crime on the East Coast knew exactly who Anthony Mancini was, what he looked like, and what it meant when he took a personal interest. Mr. Mancini, Ryan's voice was carefully controlled, but Anthony could see the raw panic bleeding into his eyes. Ryan Blake. Anthony stopped 3 feet away, close enough to be suffocating, without actually making physical contact. Your services are no longer required. I do not understand. Did I do something wrong? You know exactly what you did. Anthony's voice was barely a whisper. Absolutely deadly. You took cash from Viktor Sokolov multiple times, trading information about your clients. Ryan went rigid. I have no idea what you mean. Thursday night, 9:47 p.m., the alley behind this building, gray Mercedes, an envelope holding about $5,000. Want me to keep going? The final trace of life left Ryan's face. That is exactly what I thought. Anthony let the heavy silence stretch out. You are going to take your things and walk away. You will not contact any of your former clients. You will never enter the building Zane again. And most importantly, you are going to stay far, far away from Lauren Foster. Lauren, Ryan's voice cracked, barely audible. Does she know you've been using her to gather intel on me? No, and she won't. Unless you make me tell her. Ryan shut his eyes. When he opened them, the fight was gone. I need to explain. You need to leave. My sister is none of my concern. Whatever arrangement you have with the Bratva is your problem, but your access to my organization ends today. Ryan looked like he wanted to argue, to somehow make this different, but he was smart enough to know he had lost. He shifted his backpack. For what it is worth, I was actually helping Lauren. The training, the recovery program that was all completely legitimate. That is the only reason you are walking out of here, instead of being carried. Anthony's voice was absolute ice. Do not test my patience by trying to contact her again. Ryan gave a single nod, turned and left the gym. Anthony watched until he vanished down the street, then turned to Luca. Have him followed. I want to know every place he goes, and everyone he speaks to. If he tries to reach Lauren, I need to know right away. Done. What about the other clients he was gathering intel on? Not my problem. My asset is secure. They can protect their own people. Anthony took out his phone and sent one text to Lauren. Taking care of business. We will be back late. Do not wait for me. Her reply came immediately. Understood. Be safe. 2 words that hit entirely too hard. Be safe. As if she actually cared whether he made it home. Anthony stared at the screen for longer than necessary, before sliding the phone deep into his pocket. Tomorrow, he would tell her about Patricia Simmons, about the new physical therapy setup, right there in the building, and how Ryan would not be training her anymore. Tomorrow, he could handle her questions and confusion, but tonight, he had eliminated a major threat, cut off the Bratva completely, protected someone who mattered far more than she should, and if that meant buying a gym he had absolutely no use for, so be it. Wednesday morning arrived cold and brutally sharp. Lauren woke up at 5:30, just like she had for the past 4 weeks. Her body was finally locked into the routine. Gym at 6:30, quick shower, office by 7:30. She threw on her workout clothes, pulled her hair into a tight ponytail, and grabbed the bright pink gym bag that had become a strange comfort. The subway ride into Manhattan was dead quiet at this hour. Just a few other early risers, heading to jobs that demanded their souls before dawn. Lauren walked the 3 blocks from the station to Elevate Fitness, her breath puffing white in the bitter November air. Her injured knee felt solid this morning, almost zero stiffness. 4 months of grinding work, and she was finally feeling like her old self again. The gym came into view, but something felt entirely wrong. The lights were dead, not the usual dim overnight lighting, but pitch black. A single paper notice was taped to the front glass. Lauren's stomach plummeted. She stepped closer to read the printed text. Due to ownership transition, Elevate Fitness will be closed for reorganization starting November 19th. We apologize for any inconvenience. Regular operations will resume on November 24th. Ownership transition. Lauren pulled out her phone and dialed the emergency number stamped at the bottom of the notice. It rang 4 times before a voice finally picked up. Elevate Fitness. This is Cynthia. Hi, this is Lauren Foster. I am a member, and I am standing right outside. But the gym is completely locked up. What is going on? Oh, Lauren. Cynthia's voice sounded strange, carefully guarded. Yes, I am so sorry about the short notice. We had a totally unexpected ownership change over the weekend. The new boss is making some immediate changes. Lauren frowned. What kind of changes? A heavy pause. Some staffing adjustments and facility updates. We should be reopened by Thursday morning. Staffing adjustments. Is Ryan working today? Because I have a session scheduled. Another pause from Cynthia. Much longer this time. Ryan is no longer with Elevate Fitness. His employment was officially terminated yesterday. The words hit Lauren like a bucket of ice water. What? Why? I am not at liberty to discuss personnel decisions. But if you want to continue training, we would be happy to match you with a new trainer when we reopen. Lauren gripped her phone tighter. Can I at least contact Ryan directly? Find out his new gym information? Cynthia's voice dropped to a near whisper. I would not recommend that. The terms of his departure were highly complicated. Complicated how? I really cannot say anything more. I am so sorry. Lauren, if you decide to cancel your membership, we will immediately process a full refund. Lauren hung up, standing completely alone on the frigid sidewalk. None of this made sense. Ryan had been perfectly fine on Monday morning. He was praising her progress, mapping out next week's routine. Now he was fired under bizarre circumstances, and she was barred from even contacting him. She checked her watch. 6:45. Too late to commute home and change. Too early to show up at the corporate office in gym clothes. Lauren found a small coffee shop 2 blocks over and locked herself in the bathroom, changing into the work clothes shoved in her gym bag. Her fingers trembled slightly as she buttoned her silk blouse. Ryan had been helping her, truly, genuinely helping her, for 4 solid weeks. He was patient and encouraging. He helped her rebuild physical strength she was convinced was gone forever. And just like that, he was gone. No explanation, zero warning. She felt the sudden loss like a dull ache in her bones. By the time Lauren pushed through the office doors, it was 8:15. She dropped her bag at her desk, booted up her computer, and tried to fall into her morning routine. But her chest felt incredibly tight. Her knee throbbed, a phantom pain born entirely from stress. She stared blankly at her monitor, processing nothing. At 8:20, she stood abruptly and marched straight to Anthony's office. She did not knock. Anthony looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face. In 18 months, Lauren had never once entered his office without permission. "Lauren, did you buy my gym?" The demand came out far sharper than she intended. He slowly set down his pen. His stone-cold expression did not change, but a dark shift in his eyes confirmed what she already knew. "Yes." That single word made her knees go weak. "And you fired Ryan?" "Yes." Lauren's trembling hand found the back of the leather guest chair, gripping the stitching for balance. "Why, sit down," he ordered. "I do not want to sit. I want to know why you destroyed the one single thing helping me recover from an injury." "I only got because I work for you." Anthony stood up slowly, stepping around his massive desk. "That is exactly why I did it. That makes absolutely no sense." "Sit down, Lauren." His voice was strangely gentle, but totally firm. "Please." She sat, not because he asked, but because her legs simply gave out. Anthony returned to his leather chair, unlocked a heavy drawer, and pulled out a manila folder. He dropped it on the desk between them, spinning it around to face her. The first page was an 8x10 photograph. Ryan standing in a dark alley, talking quietly to a man in a tailored suit. Even through the grainy surveillance quality, Lauren recognized the brick wall, right behind Elevate Fitness. "Who is that?" she asked. "Viktor Sokolov. He works for Alexei Volkov, head of the Russian Bratva. They are my biggest rival." Lauren looked up sharply. "What does that have to do with Ryan?" Anthony just flipped to the next page. Another photo. Ryan accepting a thick envelope. The following page was a bank statement. Specific cash deposits were highlighted in bright yellow. Ryan has been taking between $8,000 and $15,000 a month in blind cash deposits. The money flows straight from the Bratva. In exchange, he feeds them intelligence. Information about what? About his personal training clients, specifically. Clients who work for people in major positions of power. Lauren felt her stomach violently turn. "I do not understand." Anthony flipped through several more pages. Ryan has 17 regular clients. 4 of them are personal assistants or private secretaries to major figures. 1 works for a Goldman Sachs executive, 1 for Senator Morrison, 1 for the district attorney's office, and 1 works for me. The brutal implication crashed over her like a tidal wave. "You think he was using me?" "I do not think." "I know." Anthony kept his voice steady, entirely factual. "You have access to my schedule, my private meetings, my daily movements. That intelligence is extremely valuable to my enemies." Lauren stared at her shaking hands, pressing them flat against her thighs. "Ryan was helping me. He was kind and patient. He helped me walk again without pain. I am sure he was good at his job. That is exactly how this works. Build trust, establish rapport, extract information without the target realizing what is happening." Target. The word tasted bitter in her mouth. "I was a target. You were vulnerable. You needed help. He provided it. And in return, he asked questions. Casual questions that just felt like friendly conversation. What time does your boss arrive? Does he keep regular appointments? Where does he go when he is not in the office? Every single answer you gave him went straight back to the Bratva. Lauren squeezed her eyes shut. She desperately tried to replay her gym conversations with Ryan. Had she actually mentioned Anthony's schedule, his private meetings? Yes, she absolutely had. Multiple times. "Ryan tried to take me to coffee last week," she whispered, right after a particularly good session. "I told him no, because it felt completely inappropriate, but he seemed so disappointed. Because you were careful, Lauren. Some of his other targets were not." Anthony pulled out one last page. That Goldman Sachs executive was robbed 3 weeks ago. He was viciously attacked in a parking garage. At the exact time his assistant told her trainer he would be there alone. Lauren felt physically sick. "You are telling me Ryan set that whole thing up?" "The Bratva did. Ryan simply provided the operational intelligence." She stared down at the glossy photos scattered across the desk, at Ryan's smiling face frozen in surveillance images, accepting dirty cash from a man who looked like he killed people for a living. How had she been so incredibly blind? I actually trusted him. Her voice broke on that last word. That was the whole point. She was supposed to trust him. She admitted she felt entirely stupid. Tears burned behind her eyes. But she refused to let them fall. She should have known. Should have suspected. But he countered, why would you? The guy was doing exactly what she hired him to do. Helping her recover. The intelligence gathering was completely invisible. But you saw it, she pointed out, finally meeting Anthony's eyes. You figured it out, she said. He admitted. He followed her to the gym Thursday night. Lauren blinked. You followed me. Something flickered across his face, discomfort. Maybe embarrassment. He explained he saw Ryan take money from Victor in an alley behind the gym. After that, he had the trainer investigated. You followed me to the gym. Lauren repeated the words slowly, processing everything. Why Anthony stayed quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, less controlled, far more raw. He admitted he didn't like how she smiled when she talked about the trainer. The confession hung heavy in the air between them. You were jealous, Lauren stated, a cold, hard fact, not a question. He claimed he was concerned about security. You were jealous. She pressed harder. That is why he was watching the gym. Not because he actually suspected Ryan of anything, just because he hated that she was spending time with him. Anthony's jaw tightened as he replied that both things could be true. Lauren sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. Anthony Mancini, her boss, the man who controlled half of organized crime on the East Coast, had been jealous of her personal trainer. She asked quietly what happens now. He told her the recovery continues. He had already arranged for a replacement. Anthony pulled out a different folder. Patricia Simmons, 52 years old, 28 years of experience, specializing in post-surgical rehabilitation. Her background check was entirely clean. 0 connections to any organization. No leverage anyone could use against her. Lauren realized he had vetted her physical therapist extensively. He confirmed. She starts Wednesday. They were converting the second-floor conference room into a therapy space with professional equipment. She would train there instead of an outside facility. You are bringing her here, to the building. Yes, where his security could monitor access. Lauren just stared at him. He bought an entire gym, fired her trainer, hired a replacement, and redesigned an office space. In 4 days. 3. Actually, he noted he didn't start until Friday morning. Anthony, she said, using his first name without even thinking. This is insane. This is necessary, he countered. He leaned forward, sheer intensity radiating from every line of his body. She had been targeted because of him. Working for him made her valuable to his enemies, and he refused to let that happen again. She shot back, so he was just going to control every single aspect of her life now. Decide who she trains with, where she goes, what she does, if that was what it took to keep her safe. Yes, she insisted she didn't need a keeper. He insisted she needed protection. There is a difference, Lauren wanted to argue. She wanted to be furious about the high-handed way he dismantled her routine without asking. But sitting across from him, seeing the photos of Ryan's absolute betrayal scattered across the desk, she just couldn't find the anger. He had protected her. He eliminated a threat she never even knew existed. Thank you. The words came out soft. Anthony's expression shifted, asking what she was thanking him for. For caring enough to follow her, she said, for investigating Ryan, for making sure she was safe. She met his eyes squarely. She knew he blamed himself for the accident, knew he felt he owed her something, because she got hurt working for him, but he didn't. She chose to work here. She knew the risks. He fired back that she shouldn't have to accept being an intelligence asset as part of her job description. Maybe not, she agreed, but he stopped it before any real damage was done. So, thank you. A heavy silence stretched between them. Anthony looked at her like he was trying to memorize her face. Then he admitted he needed to tell her something else. What? Buying the gym and firing Ryan had been about security, he explained, but watching her with him, seeing how she smiled at the trainer, how comfortable she was around him, he stopped, his jaw working. That was not just security, that was jealousy. Pure, irrational jealousy he had absolutely no right to feel. Lauren's breath caught in her throat. She was his secretary, Anthony continued. This was inappropriate in about 40 different ways, but he could not keep pretending. His only concern was professional. Not after spending 4 days systematically removing another man from her life, simply because he could not stand watching her trust him. She breathed his name. He told her she didn't have to respond. He wasn't expecting anything from her, but she deserved honesty. And the brutal truth was that protecting her was not just about security anymore. It hadn't been for a while. Lauren sat completely frozen, desperately trying to process what he had just admitted. Anthony Mancini, a man who maintained rigid control over every aspect of his life, had just confessed to jealousy, to feelings crossing every professional boundary. She whispered that she didn't know what to say. He told her she didn't have to say anything. He just needed her to know. He stood up, putting physical distance between them. Patricia would be there Monday at 8 o'clock. Luca would show her the new therapy space that afternoon, so she knew where to go. Professional again, controlled again, like the confession had never even happened. But Lauren's heart was pounding. Her hands were still shaking. Everything she thought she understood about her relationship with Anthony Mancini had just been turned completely upside down. 3 weeks passed in a new rhythm. Lauren trained with Patricia Simmons every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning at 7 o'clock, right there, in the converted therapy space on the second floor. The room had been completely transformed. Professional rehabilitation equipment lined one wall, padded mats covered the floor, and mirrors reflected natural light from the massive windows. Patricia was absolutely nothing like Ryan. She was methodical, clinical, focused entirely on biomechanics and recovery metrics. She never made small talk or asked personal questions. She assessed Lauren's progress with the detached efficiency of someone who had spent 3 decades rebuilding broken bodies. And under her care, Lauren's recovery accelerated dramatically. The limp disappeared completely. The persistent ache that had stalked her through every single day since the accident faded to absolutely nothing. By the end of the second week, Patricia had her doing exercises that would have been completely impossible a month ago. Her muscle memory was excellent. Patricia observed during a Friday session, watching Lauren move through a complex squat variation. The foundation was always there. They just had to remind her nervous system how to access it. Lauren finished the set, breathing hard, but entirely controlled. She asked how much longer until she could try running. Just another week. They would start with light jogging on the treadmill, assess how the joint responds, then build from there. Patricia made notes on her tablet. Lauren was progressing well ahead of schedule. Whatever work she did before the accident, her body hadn't forgotten it. But what Lauren's body also hadn't forgotten was the distinct awareness of being watched. Anthony observed every single session. Not obviously, not intrusively, but Lauren could see him through the glass wall separating the therapy room from the hallway. He would walk past with a file in his hand, pause for 30 seconds to check his phone, and glance through the window. Or he would be deep in conversation with Luca, standing precisely where he had a clear, unobstructed view of the room. He was checking on her, making sure she was safe, that Patricia was legitimate, that no new threats had somehow materialized. It really should have felt suffocating. Instead, Lauren found it strangely comforting. The day after Anthony's raw confession in his office, things had been tense. Lauren had spent the entire day hyper-aware of his presence, analyzing every interaction, feeling the heavy weight of what he had admitted. But by the end of the week, they had fallen into something new. Not the rigid professionalism of before, yet not quite personal. Either. It was a strange middle ground. Anthony asked about her therapy progress. Lauren occasionally stayed late to help him review documents, and neither of them openly acknowledged the seismic shift that had happened between them. Then Luca walked into Anthony's office on a freezing December morning with information that changed everything. Lauren was at her desk, reviewing next week's schedule, when she heard Anthony's voice through the opened door. He demanded to know if it was certain, confirmed through 3 separate sources. Luca replied, his voice completely grim. Melissa Blake had disappeared 4 months ago. Last seen August 14th. Walking home from a shift at a Brooklyn bookstore. Security footage showed 2 men following her. They matched known Bratva associates. Lauren's hand instantly stilled on her keyboard. Melissa Blake, Ryan's sister. Anthony asked where she was right now. A warehouse complex near the Red Hook shipping terminal. They had held surveillance on the location for 2 days. She was being kept in the main building, 2nd floor, in a room facing the water. Anthony asked about the guards. 6 rotating shifts. 2 men per shift. Standard Bratva security protocol for hostage situations. And Ryan still under surveillance. The trainer had not attempted to contact Lauren or any of his former clients. He was holed up in New Jersey with his mother, had not left the house in 3 weeks. A heavy silence followed. Lauren knew she shouldn't be listening, but she couldn't make herself move. They took his sister to force his cooperation. Anthony finally realized aloud. He was never working for them by choice. Luca agreed it looked that way, which meant when Anthony cut off Ryan's access to Lauren, he also severed the man's ability to protect his own sister. Anthony coldly stated that was not his problem, but Luca pushed back. If the Bratva realized their intelligence stream dried up, they might eliminate the sister. She was a total liability now. More silence. Lauren held her breath. What was their endgame with Lauren? Anthony asked. From what Luca pieced together, they were building a complete profile. Her routines, her vulnerabilities, her entire schedule. The plan was to grab her in about 2 weeks, use her as leverage to force concessions from you. Lauren felt the blood drain from her face. They were going to kidnap her. That was the working theory. Ryan had been feeding them intel for 3 months. They finally had enough to make a move. She stood slowly, walked straight to Anthony's door. Both men looked up the second she appeared. She asked how long they had known. Her voice sounded steadier than she actually felt. Anthony's expression stayed deadpan. Luca just confirmed it. But you suspected. She pushed. He admitted. He suspected Ryan was gathering intelligence. He just did not know the specific Bratva plan until right now. Lauren stepped fully into the office. They were going to kidnap me. Anthony nodded. They were planning to. Yes. But he insisted she was never in actual danger because he removed Ryan before they could act. She processed the words, hands curling into tight fists at her sides. What about his sister? Is she being held because of the intel Ryan collected? Anthony answered flatly. She is being held because the Bratva uses family members as leverage. That is just what they do. But he was gathering intel because they had her. She fired back. Which means I am tied to this whether I want to be or not. Anthony stood, walked around his desk. He told her this was not her responsibility. A 19-year-old girl is a hostage, she argued, because her brother tried protecting her by spying on me. How is that not my responsibility? Anthony stayed calm. The Bratva made that choice. Not you. Ryan made that choice. You are a victim here, not a participant. So what happens to her? Lauren looked back and forth between Anthony and Luca. You just leave her there to die. That is not our problem to solve. Anthony said carefully. Yes, it is. Lauren's voice turned to ice. The only reason she is in danger is because of your world. Your enemies. The fact that I work for you. If you can rescue her, you absolutely should. He told her he does not involve himself in Bratva internal affairs unless they directly threaten his interests. They were planning to kidnap me, she snapped. That sounds pretty direct to me. Anthony's jaw tightened. That threat is already neutralized. What about future threats? She demanded. What about the next time they decide I am useful leverage? Leaving their hostage situation unresolved does not make me safer. It just delays the inevitable. Luca cleared his throat. He pointed out she was not wrong. The Bratva knows they found out about Ryan. They are going to retaliate somehow. Luca suggested framing it as a preemptive strike, sending a clear message that they do not tolerate civilian targets. Anthony looked at Lauren for a long, heavy moment. She met his gaze without flinching once. He asked quietly if she really understood what she was asking him to do. I understand you are capable of getting her out safely, she replied. And 19-year-old girls should not be used as weapons in your war. Something subtle shifted in Anthony's expression. He told her she was too good for this world. Maybe, she shot back. But I am in it anyway. So I might as well use whatever influence I have to actually do something right. Anthony turned to Luca. Start planning an extraction. I want options by end of day. Yes, sir, after Luca left the room. Lauren remained standing right in the doorway. Anthony moved to the window, hands deep in his pockets, staring out at the city skyline. You are accepting my security detail, he stated without turning around. Permanent driver, bodyguard when you leave this building, full electronic sweep of your apartment. I know, she said, and you are not going to fight me on it. I understand why it is completely necessary now. Good, he finally turned to face her, because the Bratva will definitely notice. When their warehouse gets hit, they will figure out the connection, and they will be furious. So we make sure they are too busy dealing with their own problems to come after me. Lauren crossed her arms tight. I am part of this now, Anthony. You made that incredibly clear when you bought an entire gym just to protect me. So, yes, He studied her face, searching for something hidden. He murmured that most people would run, would quit, would distance themselves from this nightmare as fast as possible. I am not most people. No, his voice dropped low. You really are not. The air between them felt totally charged, heavy with everything they were not saying. I should get back to work, she finally whispered. Lauren. He stopped her right before she reached the door. Thank you. For what? For caring about a girl you have never even met. For making me remember there are lines that should not be crossed, even in this brutal life. She gave a single nod and walked back to her desk. but she felt his eyes burning into her back the entire way. That evening, Lauren stayed late again, not because Anthony asked her to. She just wanted to understand exactly what was happening. She needed to see the plans, know the real risks, be part of the solution instead of just another liability he had to manage. By 10 p.m., they were completely alone in his office. Maps of the Red Hook area lay spread across his massive desk. Luca had provided detailed layouts of the warehouse complex, guard rotation schedules, and blind spots. The optimal approach is here. Anthony pointed toward a service entrance on the east side. 2-man entry team. Suppressed weapons. Neutralize the guards quietly. A second team secures the perimeter and blocks any reinforcements. They are in and out in under 10 minutes. Lauren leaned over the map, studying the dark ink. What about cameras? Luca will have his team loop the video feeds. As far as their security system is concerned, absolutely nothing will happen. And the girl, Melissa, how do you know she will even cooperate? She has been held captive for 4 months. She might not trust anyone. That is why we are bringing Ryan. Lauren's head snapped up. What? Ryan knows his sister. She will trust him. We extract both of them together. Relocate them somewhere safe. You would really do that, after everything he did. Anthony straightened up, holding her gaze. He was protecting his family. I understand that motivation. And you are right. This whole situation exists because of my world. The very least I can do is end it properly. They stood close together. Just the paper map between them. City lights painted harsh shadows across Anthony's face. Lauren could smell his cologne sharp and woodsy. She could see the rough stubble on his jaw, where he skipped his usual evening shave. Her hand rested on the mahogany desk near his, not touching, but agonizingly close. The accident, Anthony said suddenly. 6 months ago. It haunts me. Lauren went completely still. Every time I see you limp, he continued. Every single time you wince because your knee aches. Every time I remember you were in that taxi because of paperwork I needed filed, because you work for me, because being near me makes you a target. His voice went raw. It is a heavy weight I carry every single day. I never blamed you for it. You should have quit immediately, should have taken that settlement money, and walked far away from this brutal life, from me, from all of it. But I did not. She turned to face him fully. I chose to stay, not because I felt obligated, not because I was afraid to leave, but because I trust you, because working for you, being a part of this dark world, it makes me feel like I am contributing to something that actually matters. Lauren, I run a criminal organization. Nothing about this matters in any legitimate sense. You protect people, she insisted. You maintain order. You have strict rules, boundaries, things you will never compromise on. That matters to me. They were mere inches apart now, neither of them sure how that physical distance had closed. You are too good for me, Anthony said quietly. Stop telling me what I am. I know exactly who I am. I know what I want. And what do you want? The question hung between them. Dangerous. Necessary. Lauren's hand moved just a fraction, until her fingers finally brushed his, where they gripped the edge of the desk. The contact was electric. I want to stop pretending. This is just professional. Anthony's breath caught. His hand turned palm up, his fingers lacing tightly with hers. This is a terrible idea. Probably. You work for me. There are 100 reasons why this crosses every line. I know. And you are under pressure right now. The threat. The security concerns. Everything happening around you. I will not take advantage of that. Lauren stepped closer. Her free hand came up to rest flat against his chest. You are not taking advantage. I am choosing this. Fully aware. Completely conscious of every single complication. Anthony's other hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Once we cross this line, there is zero going back. Everything changes. Everything already changed, she whispered. We are just finally admitting it. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She stood her ground. Their lips met softly at first. Testing, questioning. Then Anthony's control completely cracked. He pulled her flush against him, kissing her with the desperate intensity of months of suppressed want. Lauren melted into him, her hands fisted fiercely in his shirt, letting herself finally feel everything she had been pushing down since he confessed his jealousy 3 weeks ago. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Anthony rested his forehead heavily against hers. This complicates everything, he whispered into the dark. I know, I cannot promise you safety. I cannot promise normalcy. My world is dangerous and dark and full of lethal threats. I am not asking for promises. I am just asking for honesty, for this, whatever this becomes. He kissed her again, much softer this time. You have it, all of it. They stood together in his office, the tactical map completely forgotten, the rescue operation temporarily pushed aside, so letting themselves finally acknowledge what had been building between them for months. Outside, the city glittered with cold lights, totally oblivious to the massive shift happening 40 stories above its busy streets. Inside, Lauren Foster and Anthony Mancini crossed a heavy line they had both been carefully avoiding, and neither of them regretted it. 3 days after those maps had been spread across Anthony's desk, the rescue operation launched at 2 a.m. Lauren was not part of it. Anthony made that explicitly clear. You stay at the penthouse. He laid down the law that afternoon, his voice leaving absolutely zero room for argument. 4 guards remain with you. You monitor comms on the secure channel, but you do not leave that building under any circumstances. Lauren had wanted to fight him on this, to insist she could actually be useful, but one look at Anthony's expression told her the boss wasn't negotiating. So she sat on the leather sofa in his penthouse, 43 floors above Manhattan, drowning in his old sweatshirt. Because the apartment felt freezing without him in it, a radio sat on the coffee table, locked to his crew's secure frequency. Static hissed, clipped. Professional voices broke through. Team 1 in position. Parameters secure. Target building confirmed with 6 heat signatures on the 2nd floor. Lauren pulled the sweatshirt sleeves over her hands, drawing her knees tight against her chest. 4 of Anthony's enforcers were stationed across the penthouse. 1 at the elevator, 1 in the hall, 2 sweeping the rooms. She was as perfectly safe as humanly possible. But Anthony was stepping into a building, packed with armed men, who wouldn't hesitate to drop him. The radio popped again, initiating entry in 30 seconds. Lauren's heart hammered against her ribs. She checked her phone. 2:37 in the morning. Entry successful. Moving to secondary. A long, terrible silence followed, leaving Lauren counting her own heavy heartbeats and fighting off visions of everything going wrong. Then the voice returned package located. Female. Conscious. Proceeding with extraction. Pure relief washed over her. Melissa was alive. But then contact east stairwell. Engaging the sharp, unmistakable crack of gunfire echoed from the speaker. Lauren's hands clamped into white-knuckled fists. Voices overlapped in a chaotic rush. Reinforcements incoming. 3 vehicles. Estimated 12 hostiles. Team 2, intercept and delay. Roger that. Boss is hit. Left shoulder. Still mobile. Lauren completely stopped breathing. Anthony took a bullet. She wanted to grab the radio and scream for a status update, to know exactly how bad it was. But she forced her jaw shut. A distraction now meant dead men. Exiting building. Package secure. Boss is moving. Wound looks superficial. All units fall back to the rally point. Team 2 confirmed 3 hostiles down. The rest running. Clean exit. The transmissions kept flowing for another 10 agonized minutes as the crew extracted from Red Hook, burning routes and swapping cars so nobody tracked them. It was standard syndicate protocol she had picked up after months on the edges of Anthony's brutal world. Finally, the radio declared all clear, returning to base with an ETA of 4 hours. 4 hours. It was barely 3 in the morning. He wouldn't be back until 7. Lauren stood up, pacing the massive living room. The space was a fortress of dark wood, heavy leather, and floor-to-ceiling windows, showing off the glittering city. She had only been here twice before, always keeping a strict professional distance. But tonight she was living here. Her overnight bag sat in his guest room. Her clothes hung in the closet. It was just a temporary security measure, while the Bratva threat stayed hot. But standing there in his oversized sweatshirt, waiting for him to survive a gunfight, absolutely nothing felt temporary. She tried to sleep. She laid fully clothed on top of the guest bed covers. 10 minutes later, she was right back in the living room, staring a hole through the radio, begging it for updates it couldn't give. At 3:45, one of the guards brought her some tea, swearing the boss had survived worse. Lauren clung to the warm mug. She asked how many times he had been shot. The guard shrugged 4. At least, but he always comes back. The answer didn't offer a shred of comfort. At 4:15, the private elevator chimed. Lauren was on her feet in a flash. The guard stepped aside as the steel doors slid open. Anthony walked out first, flanked by Luca and 2 unknown enforcers. His white shirt was ruined a massive, dark bloom of blood soaked his left side from shoulder to stomach. His jacket was missing. His face was dead pale, yet completely composed. Her vision zeroed in on the crimson stain. She told him he was bleeding, her voice barely a rough whisper. Anthony kept moving toward her, steps perfectly steady, waving it off as a treated flesh wound. He told her Melissa was safe under armed guard at a private clinic, and Ryan was with her. You are bleeding. Lauren repeated, completely unable to process another word. He stopped right in front of her, insisting he was fine. She fired back that half his shirt was soaked in blood, which was the exact opposite of fine. Luca cleared his throat and suggested the boss let her examine the hasty field dressing. Anthony's jaw locked tight. He claimed it was handled. Lauren stood her ground, she needed to see it. Lauren set her tea down, with violently shaking hands, and begged him. Something in her raw tone broke his defense. He ordered everyone out. The guards and Luca vanished back into the elevator, leaving them in heavy silence. Lauren pointed at the sofa and ordered him to sit down right now. He actually sat, probably out of pure shock at her commanding tone. She stepped between his knees and reached for his ruined collar. Her fingers trembled so viciously, she fumbled the very first button. Anthony gently caught her hand, promising her he was really okay. She just demanded to see it for herself. He surrendered, dropping his hand so she could work the buttons, peeling the stiff, bloody fabric away from his battered skin. The undershirt was just as drenched. She eased the heavy dress shirt off his shoulders, flinching when a sharp hiss of pain escaped his teeth. Once she pulled the ruined undershirt over his head, the brutal reality was fully exposed. A bullet had ripped straight through his left shoulder muscle. Someone had hastily stuffed the entry and exit holes with gauze and wrapped it tightly in tape, but thick, dark blood was already fighting its way through the white bandages. Anthony murmured that it looked worse than it felt. Lauren's vision swam with fresh tears. She told him he could have died. He countered gently that he was still breathing, but her voice cracked. She told him he could have bled out while she sat there, listening to the radio static. Anthony reached up with his good hand, softly cupping her cheek, reminding her he was right there. She cried that being shot was nowhere near fine, the tears spilling over no matter how hard she fought them. She demanded the trauma kit. He pointed her toward the master bathroom. Lauren dragged the heavy, professional-grade medical bag into the living room, the kind of gear that proved. This mafia boss was far too used to bleeding out in his own penthouse. Kneeling beside him, she meticulously peeled away the soaked field dressing. The entry hole was small and clean, but the exit wound was a jagged mess. She told him with a shaky breath just how lucky he was 2 inches right, and his lung would have collapsed. Anthony knew. She swabbed the raw flesh with strong antiseptic, fighting to keep her hands from shaking. Anthony never flinched. He didn't make a sound. He just watched her face. Lauren asked him quietly what ran through his head during the firefight. Right when the bullet hit, he said he was thinking of her. Her hand stopped moving entirely. He told her he was thinking about his promise to come back, and how he refused to break it. His dark eyes locked onto hers. He confessed that every violent move he made in that warehouse was driven by the need to get back to her. Lauren's chest ached. Then Anthony told her he loved her. Just like that, stated like a stone-cold fact. He admitted he had been in love for months. Ever since the accident, when she stubbornly refused to blame him. Maybe even earlier. But tonight, dodging bullets in the dark, his only thought was staying alive, because she was waiting. The bloody bandage slipped from her fingers. She repeated it. He loved her. He swore it was true. She told him he almost died before she ever knew. He promised her he was right here. Then she finally kissed him. A desperate collision tasting like salt and terror. Anthony wrapped his good arm around her waist, dragging her closer, despite the tearing pain in his shoulder. When they broke apart, Lauren pressed her forehead against his and confessed she loved him too. She admitted she had fought it, grasping at professionalism, trying to write it off as trauma or gratitude, but she was totally done lying to herself. She loved him, and watching him step out of that elevator, soaked in blood, was pure torture. Anthony's fingers tangled into her hair as he murmured an apology. She told him not to be sorry, just to stop almost dying. When she begged for a guarantee, he refused to lie. His criminal world didn't offer any, so she demanded he promised to always fight his way home. That much he could promise. Always. He kissed her again, the edge finally softening. Lauren patched up his shoulder with trembling hands, easing a clean shirt over his ruined skin. Outside the massive windows, a pale dawn was bleeding over the skyline. She told him he desperately needed rest, and he echoed it right back. They walked to his bedroom together, refusing to let go. She helped him settle into the heavy sheets, careful of the wound, then curled tightly against his uninjured side. She rested her ear against his chest just to listen to his steady heartbeat. He was actually alive. She whispered a question about Melissa. He assured her the girl was terrified but physically fine. Ryan was guarding her at the hospital until the syndicate planned their next move. And the Bratva. Anthony figured they would retaliate soon. But tonight proved civilian hostages were a fatal mistake. Lauren traced slow circles over his heart, asking what happened next. Anthony's voice went dead serious. She was staying put, defenses were going up, and tomorrow, every single soldier in his empire would know she belonged to him, and touching her meant an absolute death sentence. Possessive much, completely. His arm tightened around her waist. You are the most important thing in my life. Lauren, I am not taking chances with your safety. She pushed back. What about yours? I have been doing this for 15 years, he said. I know how to stay alive. You got shot tonight, and yet I am still here, still holding you. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Go to sleep. We will figure everything else out later. Lauren wanted to stay awake and memorize the exact feeling of his heartbeat steady against her ear. But bone-deep exhaustion pulled her under. The adrenaline crash finally hit. She drifted off, wrapped in Anthony's arms. The Mafia boss she tried so hard to resist was holding her like she was the only thing that mattered. Something worth surviving for. When she finally woke hours later, heavy sunlight was streaming through the bedroom windows. Anthony was still fast asleep beside her, breathing deep and even, despite the bullet wound. Lauren carefully extracted herself. She walked to the kitchen and started the coffee. Her phone screen lit up. 11 missed messages from Sarah, her best friend, frantically wondering where she had disappeared to. She would have to explain eventually. Have to tell Sarah that she fell hard for her boss, that her life was turning into a violent mob drama, that she was choosing this dangerous, deeply complicated path anyway, but not today. For now, she just walked back to the bedroom and watched Anthony sleep. Just grateful he made it home. Grateful for the risk they finally took. Grateful that whatever hell came next, they were going to face it together. 2 days passed. Lauren sat on the edge of the mattress while Anthony slept behind her. His arm rested protectively over the empty sheets. Her phone felt unnaturally heavy. She stepped into the bathroom, closed the door, and called Sarah. The answer came on the very first ring. Lauren. Sarah's voice cracked with raw anger and desperate relief. Where the hell have you been? I have been calling you for days. I am here, Lauren whispered, her throat tight. I am safe. I am so sorry. Something happened, and I cannot explain it over the phone. I still cannot. Not quite yet, but I am alive. A shaky silence hung on the line. Then Sarah exhaled, like she had been holding her breath since Tuesday. Are you hurt? No, not me. Lauren swallowed hard. I just needed you to know. I did not vanish because I stopped caring. You sound terrified, Sarah said softly. I am, Lauren admitted, but I am not alone. I will tell you everything when I can. Very soon, I promise. Another heavy pause. Then Sarah's voice steadied. You have to meet me. Okay, in person. Somewhere incredibly public. As soon as you possibly can. I will text you a time and place. And if I go quiet again, it does not mean I am gone. I hate this, Sarah murmured. Love threaded right through the words. But I am here. Call me the absolute second you can. Lauren closed her eyes, letting that pure relief settle deep into her bones. Thank you. When she ended the call, her hands were visibly shaking, but the crushing weight in her chest eased up, just enough to take a breath. 5 days after Melissa Blake was pulled from the Bratva warehouse, Ryan was marched into Anthony's office under armed escort. He looked like he had not slept a single minute since the rescue. Brutal dark circles shadowed his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. His hands trembled slightly when Lucas shoved him into the leather chair across from Anthony's desk. Ryan fully expected to die today. Lauren could see it in every rigid line of his body, the way he braced himself, just waiting for the violence. She chose to be in the room for this. Anthony had given her the option to stay far away, to distance herself from whatever blood was about to spill. But Lauren needed to hear the truth directly from Ryan, needed to understand exactly why he betrayed her. Anthony sat behind his massive desk, his expression entirely unreadable. Lauren stood by the window with her arms crossed, watching. Your sister is safe, Anthony said without any preamble. She is recovering at a private medical facility. No permanent physical injuries, though the psychological trauma will take serious time to heal. Ryan's composure shattered instantly. His head dropped into his hands. His shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. You are welcome. Anthony's voice was ice cold. Now tell me why I should not kill you anyway. Ryan looked up, tears streaming down his bruised face. I never wanted to betray anyone, especially not Lauren. She was kind to me. She trusted me. But they had Melissa. Explain it, Anthony demanded. The story spilled out in broken, jagged pieces. 4 months ago, Melissa was walking home from her shift at a Brooklyn bookstore. 2 men grabbed her right off the street and threw her into a van. 3 hours later, Ryan received a video. It showed his sister bound and absolutely terrified. A gun pressed hard to her skull. The message was simple: cooperate or watch her die. They wanted information on my wealthy clients, Ryan said, his voice entirely hoarse. Schedules, daily routines, security vulnerabilities, anyone connected to someone important. I tried to refuse them. I told them I could not do that to innocent people, so they sent me another video. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, opened a hidden folder. He turned the cracked screen toward Anthony. The footage showed Melissa being brutally beaten, crying, begging her older brother to do whatever they asked. Lauren felt her stomach violently turn. So I cooperated. Ryan's voice broke again. I collected the information. I passed it along. I told myself I was protecting my sister, that I would find a way to get her out eventually. But every day that passed, every client I sold out, it just got worse. When Lauren started training with me, I knew exactly who she worked for. I knew she would be valuable to them. I hated myself for it, but I could not stop. Every single time I thought about refusing, they sent another video of Melissa. He showed them more evidence. Text messages from Bratva handlers, demanding specific answers. Photos of Melissa trapped in different corners of that warehouse. Sick proof of life to keep him compliant. A meticulous, horrifying record of 4 months of coercion and absolute terror. I never wanted to hurt Lauren, Ryan said. He looked directly at her for the very first time. Everything I did to help you recover, that was real. The training program, the encouragement, watching you get stronger, that was the only good thing in my miserable life during those months. And I destroyed it by using you anyway. Lauren slowly uncrossed her arms. She knew she should be angry. She should hate him for the betrayal, for making her a target, for putting her in the crosshairs. But looking at his destroyed face, understanding the pure hell he endured, she could not find the rage. Your sister is 19 years old, she said quietly. Of course you did what they asked. Anyone would have. That does not make it right. No, but it makes it understandable. Lauren moved a few steps closer to the desk. You were protecting family. That is not evil, Ryan. That is human. Anthony watched this entire exchange with careful, calculating attention. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk. I am going to offer you 2 choices, he said. When you and Melissa disappear, brand new identities, relocation somewhere far from New York, and enough money to start over. You walk away from this criminal life and never look back. Ryan nodded slowly. And the second choice, you work for me. You have spent 4 months embedded with the Bratva intelligence operation. You know their structure, their brutal methods, their contacts. That information is highly valuable. Use it to help me dismantle their operation. And I will protect both you and your sister. Permanent employment, legitimate security work, a real chance to make this right. You would trust me? Ryan asked, his voice completely incredulous. After everything I did, I trust your motivation, Anthony replied. You protected your family. I understand that kind of loyalty. What I need to know is whether you can redirect it. Ryan looked over at Lauren. Would you be okay with that? Me working here, I am not the one making this decision, Lauren said flatly. But for what it is worth. I believe people deserve second chances when they earn them. You were trying to save your sister. That counts for something. Then I want the second choice. Ryan finally straightened up in his chair. I want to work for you. I want to help take down the monsters who did this to Melissa, to me and to everyone else they have hurt. And I want to prove I am more than what they forced me to become. Anthony studied him in silence for a long moment. If you betray me again, you will not get a third chance. I understand. Good. Report to Luca tomorrow morning. He will start your debriefing. After Ryan left the office with his escort, Lauren moved to stand right beside Anthony's desk. That was incredibly generous. That was strategic, Anthony corrected. He knows things that will help us neutralize a major threat. You could have just extracted that information through other means, she pointed out. Anthony looked up at her. You wanted me to give him a chance. So I am giving him one. Because of me. Because you saw something worth saving. And I trust your judgment. Lauren leaned down and kissed him soft and quick. Thank you. Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan's debriefing revealed critical intelligence. The Bratva operation was far larger than Anthony suspected. Sofia with criminal networks extending through multiple cities. But the most valuable information was about their internal dynamics. Viktor Sokolov was deeply unhappy. Alexei Volkov, the Bratva leader, had become increasingly paranoid and reckless over the past year. His erratic decisions were putting the entire organization at risk, creating unnecessary conflicts, drawing unwanted attention from federal law enforcement. Viktor Sokolov wanted out. But leaving the Bratva was not something you did voluntarily. People who tried to walk away ended up in a grave. Anthony saw an opportunity. He arranged a meeting through careful intermediaries. A neutral location, heavy security for both sides. Terms that would allow Viktor to speak freely, without immediate repercussions. They met in an empty Queen's warehouse at midnight. Viktor arrived with 2 bodyguards. Anthony brought Luca and 1 other guy. He told Viktor that showing his face here was a massive risk. Viktor just smiled coldly, said Anthony was risking his neck. 2. Volkov would murder Viktor over this sit-down, and he'd see it as a declaration of war from Anthony. That meant they both needed to make this chat count. Anthony cut to the chase. What do you want? Viktor, out. He wanted a clean exit, a fresh identity, and safe passage to South America. He had guys there who owed him favors, but he needed to vanish entirely. Anthony asked what he was getting in return. Everything. Volkov's location, his schedule, security setups, the entire command structure, smuggling routes, money laundering channels, every single piece of intel needed to burn his empire to the ground. Anthony let that sink in. He asked why Viktor would turn on his own crew. Viktor replied that it wasn't his anymore. Volkov was driving them straight into the dirt. 3 jobs blew up last month just because of his paranoia. He was making enemies for nothing, throwing loyal soldiers away like garbage. The outfit Viktor joined was already dead. What about the girl? Melissa Blake. Viktor's face tightened. He said he fought that call. Snatching teenagers was beneath them, but Volkov insisted, claiming they needed maximum leverage for intel. Viktor took a breath, saying he was glad Anthony got her out. Anthony pressed him. You were the one who freed her. Viktor nodded. He leaked the location to Anthony's guys. Viktor called it a gesture of good faith before this sit-down. Anthony pulled out his phone and fired off a quick text to his people. He told Viktor the intel had to be verified before any deal got made. Viktor told him to verify whatever he wanted. Just do it fast. Volkov was already smelling blood after that warehouse raid. If he realized Viktor was the rat, this whole shot was gone. 3 days of digging proved Viktor wasn't lying. Locations, schedules, the hierarchy, every piece of it lined up perfectly with what Anthony's crew found. The hit went down on a Friday night. 5 spots struck at the exact same time. Anthony actually pulled in 2 other Italian families who had their own scores to settle with Volkov. Warehouses, front businesses, safe houses all hit right at 9 p.m. The Bratva's command structure crumbled in under 2 hours. Volkov was sitting in his favorite spot in Brighton Beach when Anthony kicked the door open, with 6 armed guys behind him. The rest of the diners scattered. The restaurant owner, a guy who'd been paying street tax to both syndicates for years, just nodded and vanished into his office. Alexei Volkov was parked at a corner table with a half-eaten meal, mid-50s, gray hair, wearing a suit that cost a fortune. He had the cold eyes of a man who spent decades clawing to power. He didn't even stand, just said Anthony Mancini's name, wondering when the move was coming. Anthony stepped closer, told him his operation was done. Every major asset seized or burning. Your top guys are either dead or locked up. It's over. Alexei Volkov reached for his wine, hands completely steady. He figured Anthony was there to put a bullet in him, asking him to make it quick. Instead, Anthony pulled out a chair and sat right across the table. He was offering a choice. Go back to Russia tonight, drop every single American operation, and never come back. Do that, and you keep breathing. Volkov narrowed his eyes. You're actually letting me walk. Anthony kept his voice level. He was removing a rival without sparking a war that would bleed them dry. Moscow would be furious. Sure, but they'd take him back if spun as a strategic retreat. Alexei gets to live. Anthony gets a permanent fix to a massive problem. A clean win for everyone. Volkov saw what happens if he refused. Anthony didn't blink. He'd die right here on this floor. The street rumor becomes that his own crew took him out over a power grab. Either way, he was done in this city. He just picks the exit. Heavy silence settled. Volkov took a slow sip of wine, weighing choices that weren't really choices at all. 2 days, Volkov finally muttered. He needed 2 days to arrange the flights and tie up loose ends. Anthony gave him exactly 48 hours before the deal expired. Alexei Volkov vanished from New York. 36 hours later, he flew out of JFK on a fake passport that Anthony's guys flagged, but let slide. Without him, the Bratva's grip on America completely shattered, swallowed up by rival crews or totally dismantled. Viktor took his payout and faded away to Sao Paulo, buried under a brand new identity. Back in New York, Ryan Blake became a permanent fixture on Anthony's security detail, working right under Luca. The kid proved he had heart. Meanwhile, Melissa started her classes at Columbia that January. Her entire tuition was handled by a quiet scholarship fund Anthony put together. She was seeing a therapist twice a week, slowly putting the pieces back together after the nightmare she lived through. As for Lauren Foster, she wasn't fetching Anthony Mancini's coffee anymore. 2 months after the Russians went down, Anthony completely changed her title. She stepped up as his strategic advisor, sitting in on the heavy meetings, throwing out angles his street captains couldn't even see, helping him steer through the ruthless politics of his own family. The dynamic between them wasn't a secret anymore. The whole outfit knew Lauren was way more than staff. She held a spot in Anthony's life that made her untouchable and seriously powerful. A few of the old-school captains muttered about it at first, but once they watched her negotiate high-stakes deals and tighten up their ground operations, all that loud skepticism just quietly faded away. She locked in her status with pure competence, not just because she shared Anthony's bed and that gym he bought out. They gutted it and built something real, a neighborhood rehab center, handing out free physical therapy to anybody who walked through the doors. No questions asked about money. Patricia Simmons took over as director. She hired a crew of heavy-hitting therapists and built programs that turned desperate lives around every single week. Lauren ran the whole operation on the side, taking a place born out of street jealousy and turning it into a lifeline that felt damn good. Jump to a freezing February night. Lauren was out on the terrace of Anthony's penthouse, watching the city glow. She had on this deep burgundy dress bought just for the occasion, hair down, the freezing wind catching it. For the first time ever, she felt bulletproof in her own skin. Anthony stepped up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. He whispered she was thinking too hard. She smiled, looking back at how wild the last 6 months had been. He asked better or worse. Terrifying, she said, and perfect. She turned around to face him, admitting she never pictured her life ending up like this. Any regrets? He asked. Not a single one. Anthony reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. Lauren stopped breathing. He quickly told her it wasn't a proposal. Not yet, but it was a promise. A concrete commitment to a future they would carve out together. A life where she wasn't just in his world, but at the absolute center of it. Then he opened the box. Inside sat an elegant, single diamond on a heavy platinum band. He looked right at her. Lauren Foster. Will you keep choosing this dangerous, beautiful, entirely imperfect life with me? Hot tears stung her eyes. She whispered that it was the easiest question she had ever answered. Yes, always yes. He slid the metal onto her finger, then kissed her with the kind of raw force that still made her knees buckle, even after all this time. Pulling back, Lauren let out a soft laugh. She reminded him that this entire empire-shaking romance started just because he got jealous of a personal trainer. Anthony smirked, said it was the best jealousy of his life. She teased him. You bought an entire gym. He didn't miss a beat, worth every single dollar. They stood there on the edge, the city sprawling beneath them like a grid of fire. Two survivors who built something unbreakable out of absolute chaos. Lauren came to New York just looking for a paycheck. Instead, she found a syndicate she could call family, real power, and a love she never saw coming. Standing wrapped in Anthony's arms, feeling the weight of his ring, she knew one thing for sure. Every single terrifying, complicated choice that dragged her into this life had been exactly right.